I will tell you, I've got some good news and some bad news this morning. The bad news is you're going to have to listen to me speak for a few minutes. But the good news is they chose Jasmine to do the singing and not me. You know, I had the honor and privilege back this past summer. I have 3 little girls, as Maggie mentioned. 2 of them, one's in the 2nd grade, one's in the 4th grade. They both had the opportunity to participate in the Miss Mississippi pageant this past year as princesses to a couple of candidates and contestants. And so I got to watch Jasmine perform many nights over in Vicksburg. And then all of my girls and I watched on that night when she was competing at Miss America, and as Maggie said earlier, she's not only our Miss Mississippi to an awful lot of people in this state, and quite frankly to an awful lot of people around this country. She performed beautifully that night, and she really made me proud to be a Mississippian. And so thank you, Jasmine, for your wonderful service to our state. I've got to tell you, this is honestly one of my favorite speaking engagements of the year because I get to have the opportunity to meet some of our brightest students as well as some of our brightest teachers who work so hard to educate our most valuable resource, our children. When I look out across the room, I've got to tell you, this is one of those events where I'm also reminded, in life there are those that can look back and say, well, that's a moment when I really realized that I was going to be successful. And in some instances, such as my own, you look back and you think, well, perhaps this was a moment when I really probably should have figured things out. I'm clearly not as smart as most of you students in the room, because when I was in your position, I was convinced that my first career choice that was going to be, by the way, I was going to be successful at it, and that was my first career choice was I was going to be an NBA basketball player. Well, you can look at me now and recognize that not only was I not successful at that, but quite frankly, I never had a chance to be successful at that. But I did have the opportunity to attend Millsaps, where I went and played basketball. And as I tell people all across the state, I went there to play basketball, and I just lucked into a great education. And I'll never forget that night, early in my sophomore year, when my professors came to myself and several of my buddies and said, okay, guys, y'all played enough. You've got to select what your major is going to be. And so we sat down, and it was 4 of us in that room. And as I think back to that night, I realized, quite frankly, how unsuccessful in life I am. You see, there were 4 of us sitting around that table that night trying to decide what we were going to major in and what we were going to be when we grew up. And ultimately, fortunately for me, we all made the decision that we were all going to major in economics. What allowed me to graduate from college and obviously go into the investment business and in the investment world, and then ultimately into serving the public as your state treasurer and now as your lieutenant governor. But as I look back on that night, I realize how unsuccessful in life I really am. You see, there were 4 of us in that room that night, and as I think back on the 4 of us that chose to be economics majors, one of us went to Ole Miss Law School and finished first in his class. One of us went to Duke Business School. One of us went to Harvard Law School and Stanford Business School. And one of us got a government job. But I will tell you, the one of us that got the government job could not be more pleased and more happy about the opportunities that I get each and every day to hopefully positively impact and positively influence the lives of the 3 million Mississippians who elected me to this position. You see, each of you represent the best and the brightest in our entire state. Because if you did not, you would not be in this room today. what I would submit to you is a couple of things. First of all, I would encourage you, wherever you choose to go to college, to strongly consider either staying in or coming back to Mississippi. Right now, one of the challenges that we have is too many of our best and our brightest choose to move off and don't come back. And that's okay, by the way. Many of my friends have done the same. But I want to encourage you, if it makes sense in your life, to come back. But even if you don't, even if you choose to live in some other state, either in our country or abroad, don't ever forget the values that you learned growing up in small towns across Mississippi. Don't ever forget the teachers that are here with you today, and also the teachers that are not here with you today. Because I can't tell you the number of times over the last 12 years that I've had the opportunity to travel and talk to various folks in our state. And I'll never forget some of the stories that I hear. Some of the stories about the young man who knew he was doing bad, was making some poor decisions, but he'll remember that ninth grade teacher that taught him English, that convinced him that he needed to get back in school and he needed to focus on what was important. So don't ever forget, because everyone in here, every one of you students, you know who that teacher is in your life. You know who that adult is. It may be someone in your church that you've looked up to. And what I would say to you is, I think they're having more fun in that other room than we are. But what I would say to you is, when you think of whomever that important person is in your life, whether it's your parent or your person at church or your teacher, I would tell you that you have a responsibility to be willing, as you grow older, to be that person, to be that leader that that teacher was for you. I would also tell you that you have a responsibility, because you're one of our best and our brightest in our state. You have a responsibility to your community wherever you choose to settle. A responsibility to be a leader in that local community. You see, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and complain. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and talk about why the leaders in your local community, whether they're elected or otherwise, why they're not doing things right. But it's a little bit harder to step up and be a leader yourself. But what I would tell you this morning is that, as one of our best and our brightest, no matter where you choose to settle, you really have a responsibility to be willing to step up and make a difference in whatever local community you choose. You have a responsibility to step up and work in our local schools so that every child in our state and every other state can have an opportunity for success in life. I want to conclude this morning again by recognizing our star teachers that are here. If you're a star teacher, would you please stand up? What these men and women represent are the best that our state has to offer. Because they're not only positively affecting the lives of the students in this room, these men and women are positively affecting the lives of all of the children in our state in a job that is difficult, very difficult. And so I want to personally thank you for your service to our state. Because the thing I think we can all agree on is the only way for our state to get better, and the only way for our state to improve, and the only way for our state to prosper the way we want to is to continue to produce kids such as those in this room to be leaders for future generations. And I'll close with this story. In 2007, I was elected by my peers to chair as our national president. Our national president. And in that capacity, I traveled all over the country giving speeches. After about the second or third speech I gave, in a room not quite this packed, but a very packed room, this little lady in the back of the room came up to me. And she said, "Mr. Reeves, I'd like to ask you a question." And I said, "Well, go right ahead." She said, "Mr. Reeves," she said, "when you got out of college, you went into the investment world, and you were very successful for a period of time. And then you ran for public office, and you became the youngest statewide elected official in the history of Mississippi, and you became the youngest statewide elected official in the country at that time." She said, "And now, your peers from around the country, all 50 of them, have elected you to lead this national organization." She said, "Mr. Reeves, it seems to me you've been pretty successful in life. It seems to me you can live anywhere in the world you want to live." She said, "But I'm curious, why do you choose to live in Mississippi?" And I responded to that sweet lady very, very quickly with the only way I knew how. I said, "Ma'am, you just answered your own question." I said, "You're exactly right. I can live anywhere in the world I want to live, but I can't imagine raising my 3 little girls anywhere but Rankin County, Mississippi." And so as you go out into the world, I know you're going to be successful. There are going to be challenges, but I know you're going to be successful. But again, my challenge to you today is wherever you end up, in whatever geographic region of our country or our globe, never forget the values you learned growing up in your hometown. Thank you.